Hey there everyone, this is Phantom Games, and I've been watching videos by someone named The Raven's Living Room, and personally, I think she should definitely have more subs. Like, there are so many psychiatrists, psychologists, all that on YouTube who don't nearly go into as much depth and put out as much information as The Raven's Living Room. Like, you guys definitely should be subbing to her. I mean, I know I should be trying to promote myself, but to be honest, like, I don't know, I don't think I put as much, like, in-depth information into my videos as this lady does. Like, everything she does is perfect. Like, I would say give it a look, you check it out. I'm gonna link her down in the description below. But, like, watching her videos about Gabbi Hanna and about Creepshow art and all that, it made me really think back to the people that, like, okay, so I didn't really do this very well when I was talking about the people who hurt me in the past. I would get really emotional, I'd get real flustered, and then I just either end up crying or not fully describing what they had done to me, where it just, like, it's really hard whenever you think back to something and then you think back to the way they treated you and how they made you feel. It's just like, I don't know how to describe this. It's basically like, you know what you did wasn't wrong, not completely, but like they make you feel like what you did was wrong. And that's a lot of what I went through with this particular friend group. And like, okay, so I got to admit, I'm not a saint. And I did do a lot of bad things while I was friends with this particular group, but not to the degree that these two people who still to this very day actually bother me. Yeah, so, okay, let's go back to the very beginning. So, I went to high school with these people, and these two people specifically were, like, my BFFs. Like, I had a lot of issues in high school. I had a boyfriend who had psychological issues. I had still issues trying to discover my own sexuality. I didn't exactly like talking to people very much, and because of that, I tried to fit into groups to the point where I would actually, I personally feel terrible about this, but I did actually join in on some bullying, and it's just like, now that I think back to it, that the guy that I did this to didn't actually deserve it, and I know, like, full on saying, like, I was peer pressured into it isn't enough, because, like, the thing is like, I let a lot of that basically not wanting to be alone type thing really affect me. And I take full responsibility for what I have done. So, like, there was this guy that like, my two quote-unquote best friends would pick on. I'm gonna give him a nickname, so that it's not too weird when I'm saying the story. We're gonna call him Ryan. So, Ryan is, he's kind of the goofy guy that was in our group, and he had a habit of being a little too overly critical and being a little abrasive when he said things, and because of that, people would constantly pick on him, or I guess not really pick on him per se, but then they would, like, be overly analyzing everything he did, and then they would say nasty stuff behind his back. Basically, they would do a lot of mean girl shit to him. And Ryan, he was friends with me. Like, that's actually how I met this group, is he saw me drawing in the cafeteria. I was really into anime, still am, and, like, he saw me drawing in the cafeteria at school, and I was like, I didn't really talk to people, but he was into the same stuff as me, so I started to get close with him and we became friends. I wanted to show that I had this great admiration for him and cared deeply about him, but I think I came off as a little creepy and maybe even a little on the crushy side. I didn't really like him, like him, but more along the lines of I didn't really have a close connection with people, so I didn't really know how to speak to people and try to get close with people. So I suppose I came off as a little weird. I also had a pretty bad anxiety issue, and I still do because I have PTSD. That's from a lot of other stuff that had happened in the past, and some stuff that actually happened around high school. So, like, I was still sort of... I had a lot of things that had happened to me in the past, and it made it so that it was very difficult for me to communicate with people and have an overall, like, good relationship with people around me. So, I think that's personally why I was the one that was targeted in this whole crazy debacle that had happened. So, me, Ryan, and his friends, we would hang out, we would go to anime conventions, we would go to card shops, we would do just about everything. And he had introduced me to a friend who had gone through a breakup not too long before I had met him. And, let's see, what am I gonna call him? Because he's one of the big players in this craziness. Well, let's see. Let's call him Dan. I don't know. I want to make sure I don't give him a nickname that's close to his actual name. So we're gonna call him Dan. So Dan and I started talking a little more than I did with Ryan. And Ryan and me kind of grew a little farther apart. Ryan and Dan were pretty good best friends. Or at least that's what Ryan thought. I mean, behind Ryan's back, the biggest person who was totally against him, who treated him terribly, was Dan. Dan was just the worst. And I don't know, I guess I should have seen this, that this was probably going to happen to me at some point. But in my mind, I thought, well, Ryan is a little out there, and he's kind of overly religious, and he's a little on the, I don't know, I guess the best way to describe it is he's a little more on the eccentric side. So I was like, I just thought maybe he was just treating Ryan this way because Ryan was sort of like that. But over time I noticed that there was some sort of behavior pattern with Dan, where Dan would be like all good and the best person ever. He had this sort of wave of charisma where he seemed like the sweetest person ever, and like you can open up to him, and he made me feel like I was actually able to be good with him and open every bit of myself to him. But in the long run, I didn't realize that that good, sweet, innocent person that I thought was my friend turned out to be the biggest downfall in my life. And it's just kind of nuts to think about this because it's like, I still don't like what had happened between the two of us, and technically even the three of us, because there's another person who played a role in my demise in my friend group. And not just my friend group, but overall how people viewed me, to the point where it just, people even cheered my Facebook being hacked so that I can't actually access things and talk to my family as easily. So yeah, it's just a nightmare and a half. So what happened between Ryan and Dan is Ryan would try to get Dan to hang out with him, and like Dan would make up excuses and try to act as if like Ryan was the one being the bad one in this situation. But then over time I realized a lot of the times Ryan was just asking him to be respectful. So it's like, I'm like, what the heck is going on here? So I start talking to Dan about this, and I'm telling Dan, I mean, you could at least try to talk to Ryan when you have some free time if you're just gonna keep blowing him off. So Dan's like, oh, well, you don't have to take sides for him. He's always talking bad about you. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, he's always saying terrible things about you behind your back. And I never say it to you because I don't want to hurt your feelings. And I'm like, you're talking about Ryan, the guy who's obsessed in Naruto. And he's like, yeah, Ryan's always talking bad about you. And I'm like, okay. And the thing is like a lot of this came from the fact that I was also pointing out that Dan had a bad history of dating mentally handicapped women, and then basically these women would come to me to talk to me because I was quote-unquote his best friend, and then they would tell me what is going on, and then I would try to talk to him about it, and he'd say, well, they're nuts. I tried to end things with them and they blew it out of proportion and everything was just a nightmare. And I believed Dan because Dan had been my friend for so long. We had been friends since I was like a sophomore in high school. So I had no reason to not trust Dan. But Dan kind of also had this weird thing about him where he could seem like very sweet. It's so weird. It was like a half and half, like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type situation where at one moment he was the best person to talk to, and if you ever needed someone, he would be there for you. And then the next moment, he'd be the one talking crap about you, making you sound like the dirtiest, most disgusting person. Like, when I had first met his fiance, I personally, I do feel bad for her because, like, she probably doesn't even know he did this. But when I first had met this girl, he already had told me that she's an alcoholic. And to be honest, I don't even know if she was an alcoholic because I didn't get the chance to get to know her because he had caused issues between me and her. Because I had plain out told him a while ago, I'm not going to cover up stuff for you anymore. And he thought I was just bluffing when I said that. But it was true. I plain out told her how he hangs out with a guy who harasses women. And the thing is like, when I tried to talk to her about it, he had already put stuff in her head, probably. But, like, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, okay, I guess this just isn't gonna work out. And I tried to... I first tried to work things out with Dan because Dan was my best friend for so long. But Dan, I didn't realize, had a lot of built-up hostility due to the fact that, I don't know, I guess he assumed that I was always going to be some sort of backup if him and his whatever significant other by these numbers, I don't even know, ended up breaking up. And the thing is, it's like, me and my current partner, we've been together for a really long time. And I had gone through a lot, and he knew I had gone through a lot, but he was always hoping in the back of his mind that I was just going to fall for one of his crazy lies or tricks just to get with him. And I never did. And I guess that's probably what made him go into his whole smear campaign, talking about how I would lie about him, talk crap about him, even though a lot of the stuff I had told people, I had also told him straight to his face. So it's like, what the heck are you even talking about? So what I'm talking about is Dan, like I said, had a habit of getting with mentally handicapped women where he would go after a girl who had a weakness and then he would take advantage of that. And I would be like, wow, Dan, like, what is it with this pattern? Like, he didn't view it as a pattern. He's like, oh, I just happen to be really unlucky. And I'm like, how is it unlucky if you even knew from some of these people from the very beginning that they had issues? So the first girl that he got with was this girl, like, she had, I think, major depressive disorder, which isn't really a terrible, terrible thing, but, like, he would egg her on. He would say nasty things about her. He would say nasty things about her behind her back. He would tell me things. He would make her seem like the most disgusting human being imaginable. And then when I got to know her, I realized she's not a bad person, and that she just went through a lot. I mean, she had a over-controlling mother, she had a lot of issues with her, like, overall mental health, and part of it had to do with her being with Dan, because Dan was this very weird thing. Like, from what I've heard from a lot of the girls he's been with, is he has a habit of trying to control the situation, where he wants them to basically bend over backwards to please him, and never does he consider their needs. And I'm hoping that at some point Dan did actually get some help for this. I don't personally talk to him anymore, but I know that for a fact that he has been like this for a while. But, so Dan, he was, I don't know how to describe Dan, but like, I guess the best way to say it is he was pretty manipulative. So after he had been with this girl, he had gotten with another girl who had DID. And her DID was pretty bad to the point where she would swap out into these alters that were children. So, like, in my mind, isn't this a little weird because so many of her alters are children? So, isn't it kind of like being with a kid? So, I don't know. But, like, he, instead of acknowledging that she had an issue and trying to help her, he basically trash-talked her. And I can't say I was a saint because at some point he had convinced me that she was basically faking all of what she's doing and that she's just trying to get sympathy, and I got irritated and I started to get like bad with her as well, just like with the issue with Ryan where he would say something like that too. It was like he was always feeding these really messed up things to me, and my first response to it was to just basically trash talk it because I don't know, my way of dealing with relationships with people wasn't great, and I admit that because like I don't know, I guess I should have known better, but I didn't because I never really had that sort of connection with friends and all that. I didn't really have a great I didn't have a great life, so I didn't have a great interpersonal skills. So he went after this girl with DID, he went after with several girls with depression and addiction issues, etc., etc. It's just like it kept on going on, and at one point he dated this girl that was my other best friend at the time. So I had a male best friend and a female best friend. I'm gonna call her Sammy. So Sammy, she had very similar behavior patterns. I don't know why I was friends with these people. I'm not gonna lie. I don't recall why I was friends with this person. I know that I met her about at the same time when I was at my low point where I was emotionally just down, but she did a lot of the same stuff that Dan did, where she would go after people with mental issues or issues with their everyday life or something like that, like people who lived in very unhospitable environments, and she would just try to either befriend them or try to use them to get things she needed. So with Sammy, what she would do is she would she would ask this guy to come over to her house every day. God, what can I call him? I'm gonna call him Todd. Todd was a very nice guy, but he grew up in a household where he wasn't able to be emotionally open, and because of that, he would go over to Sammy's house and they would smoke pot together, and they would, try to open up and vent and all that. But Sammy literally was just using him for two things, both sex and for her fix. And she would basically tell me not to tell him things. And it's just like, I was in between these two very crazy people. And at some point, Sammy and Dan dated. But Sammy would tell me not to tell people that she was dating Dan, because people thought that Dan was kind of weak. They didn't know how he really was, and she didn't want to seem like she was with somebody who was just a weak, frail little puppy dog. And I don't know, maybe Dan was so good at his act that people didn't even realize he was the way he was. But these two, they started dating, and during this time, I didn't even realize this, but Sammy and Dan, even after they had broken up, still were out to get me. I mean, this isn't even me exaggerating. I noticed a little bit after then that, like, anytime something bad came up, I would be the one who was automatically blamed for it. Where, like, say somebody had an issue in their home, and they came to talk to me about it, and they didn't tell me not to tell people or anything like that, so in my concern, I try to help them, and what they would do is like, they would spin it as me being nosy and being an instigator or anything like that, and I would not know why this is going on, and I would feel like the worst person ever, so I'd try to fix it, and anytime I tried to fix it, they would make it worse. And before I knew it, I was in this endless cycle of trying to please them, even though I didn't know why I was trying to please these people who were just toxic. And overall, it took my significant other telling me that I really needed to end this chain of messed up relationship, because Sammy and Dan were kind of like... Sammy and Dan were messing with my head quite a bit. And the thing is like, at some point I was even living with Sammy. It was shortly after I had gotten out of college. I had some issues at home, financial debt, and I was trying to work things out. But I didn't know that she was going to try to, yet again, make me look bad. And I didn't realize this until well after I was about to leave her home. So here's what happened. I was living in Sammy's home, and I told her I needed her information so I can transfer my stuff from... Because at the time I was on unemployment, and I needed her information so that I can get the checks coming for my rent over to the house. So I went over there and I asked her, and she kept on telling me she was going to give it to me, she was going to give it to me. And she's like, she didn't care that if I wasn't going to get it right away because we were friends and I thought everything was all cool. But in my mind, I should have just kept on nagging her to just give me the information right away. I didn't realize that she was going to do this to me. So at some point, they tell me that, like, they need it, otherwise they're going to start canceling all my services. And I was getting a lot of stuff. I have lupus, so I needed those services. I needed medical insurance. I needed the food stamps. I needed all of this. So I had gotten in contact with the center for HRA, and they told me because at the time Sammy's mother had passed away, and I had been really close with Sammy's mother. And Sammy's mother and I were just like, we were tight. She was like a second mother to me. So we were trying to get things in order. I had to get copies of what had happened, the death certificate and all that, because she was technically basically the person who had been renting the apartment to me. So I got them the death certificate, but the death certificate didn't have the right address. The thing is like, if she had given me this stuff sooner, it could have gotten resolved sooner. But she didn't, so I ended up having to go back and forth to HRA. And the thing is like, Sammy was working all this time, so I couldn't actually just go and, you know, like, get things from her right away. So me, Sammy, and a bunch of other people were hanging out, and at some point I go to lay down. And the thing is like, my apartment at the time had, like, really bad roaches. So I hear, like, I'm going to bed and I hear her talking to one of my friends, and I hear her stating that I brought roaches into their apartment, I'm not paying rent on purpose, and all these horrible things. And then I'm starting to think, is she purposefully making it harder for me to pay the rent here, just so I look bad? And I was like, okay, that's not something I should be thinking. Maybe it's true, and that these things just never came in the mail, and that she's just frustrated, so she's talking to people. I'll talk to her about it. And so both of us were still pretty torn about her mother's passing. At least that's what I thought. And So I go and I'm going through the mail because the way, like, I had a specific organization system that I was trying to do to help her with the mail. So I'm going through the mail and I find some mail that's of mine. And it's tucked into a little drawer area on the side of her desk. And all of it was stuff from HRA. She had told me several times she got nothing from HRA. But it was there. And the thing is like, this was my fault because I should have actually asked her for the mailbox key and had access fully to the everything there. But I didn't. And when I found that, I realized she was hiding it from me. And so I was gonna bring this up, but then I heard more stuff. Ugh, God, I was so incredibly torn by this point because it's like, it was pretty obvious she was trying to make it look as if I was actively trying not to do things. And it hurt me because it's like, you were hiding my stuff from the food stamps, you were hiding my stuff from HRA, every single thing that I was trying to do to fix things, and you were telling me you were getting nothing, and overall, you did have it, and you were just trying to make me look like the bad one. So, after that, her and my other former friend, Dan, because by then me and Dan weren't so cool with each other anymore, like, we tried to be good with each other, be civil. I hung out with him a few times. We hung out with another friend, I'll call him Greg. Like, me and Greg would hang out, and he would, Dan would do his usual double two-face type thing where he would talk about people behind their back. He would talk about how Greg had diabetes, and he would just laugh about it, and it was just the worst thing ever because I was like, dude, Greg can't control the fact that he has diabetes. Like, he's got type 1 diabetes. And it's like, I personally, I felt so bad, and I couldn't deal with it anymore. And when I went away from this group with Sammy and Dan and all these toxic people that I used to talk to, that's when they started doing a smear campaign against me where they tried to make me look bad. First, they tried to discredit something that I know happened, but the thing is, it's like I can't easily prove because I don't have access to all the stuff from back then. Because a lot of this stuff happened when, like, years ago when I was close with this group. And I couldn't prove it, and it made me look bad because I guess in my mind, I know this now, but I can't go and rewind just to prove things like this. But if a friend seems like they're like this, you should probably keep track of everything that they say and do. Because don't make the mistake that I did, where I didn't keep track of these things, and then it made me look bad in the long run. It doesn't work, and I don't know. I know I should have really seen the signs that these two people were being very disgusting to me, but I didn't. Not until they had harmed me so much. I still can't get into my Facebook account. My anxiety is over the roof. I don't trust people as easily because of them, and I went through a lot, because the thing is like, I can't even be in a group of friends without thinking that these people are talking about me behind my back, probably trying to find some sort of way to make me look terrible, and I can't think that way about everyone, because not every person is going to be like these two people, but they had joined together to make sure that my life was a living hell, and I probably shouldn't really be thinking that way, but they did do this to me, and I, to this very day, am still affected by it. And so when I've been seeing this stuff about Gabbi Hanna and Creepshow art and all that, I just think to myself, I feel so bad for Hopeless Peaches, I feel so bad for Joey Graceffa, and even though these are celebrities, and all these people I guess I can empathize with them because I went through it myself. I don't think you need to go through things personally to empathize with people, but when you're somebody who's gone through several manipulators and all of them just try to gang up against you and treat you like the lowest of low, and all you want to do is just open up to the world and tell them everything they did to you, but obviously you're going to look like the liar because if you didn't keep proof of whatever happened 10 years ago because you were hoping that things were going to change. Like, I'm going to try not to get too frustrated or upset about this, but I would say try to listen to every side of a story before deciding on what you believe is true. And if a person does have receipts, I guess they were smart enough to keep track of things. I wasn't smart enough. And because of that, I ended up being the monster of my friend group. And hopefully you guys don't follow in my pattern and end up being friends with terrible people. So this is just my advice. Don't try to change yourself just to fit into a group. Don't try to be friends with people who are obviously toxic, homophobic, racist, all these terrible things, just because you hope that at some point they're gonna change. Because there's a good chance they're not going to. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. Like, comment, and subscribe for more spastastic content. And I will see you in the next one. Peace. Goodbye. Mwah.